Foxhole. Foxhole! Big pharma schemes causing death and pain. Green grip techno's just a money drain. AI surveillance plans a form of control. Big brother bill from the money they stole. We're in the foxhole now, digging deep. We're in the foxhole now, no time to sleep. We're in the foxhole. Foxhole. Foxhole.
Hey, welcome back to the Foxhole, where we stand our ground and watch for the enemy's next move. Today's episode is going to be a part 3 that Levi's been working on for us, and we're probably going to do a part 4. I don't know if that'll be next week or not. Next week is my birthday on this day, so it may have to wait till I get back from my little vacay to Colorado. But let me share my screen right quick and show you what we've been doing if you have not been paying attention. For those on video, if you're on audio, I apologize. But go check out episode 74 right here. And these are running. I've kind of consolidated everybody's stuff onto the Knights of the Storm channel, so it's easy to find. But we did so let me go back up a step. This is Hantavirus, which is pretty much any disease X, if you want to call it, war and banking, and how they're all related. So in the first episode, which is episode 74, called Hantavirus War Banking Part 1, we talked about the viral aspect of it, the medical industry aspect of it, stuff like that. Last week we did the war aspect of it, how that kind of relates. And then this week we're going to go into the banking side of it, and it's really a lot deeper than that. And we're probably gonna have to do, like I said, a 4th episode to tie all these 3 things together in a recap. And if you're watching on video, you can see the thumbnail for it. It has a data center in the background, heavy power lines going through to feed the data center, freshwater creek next to it, which is resources they're sucking for this data center. And above it, these little icons, it has a camera, which is your facial recognition, video surveillance, ID.me, which just represents some kind of a digital ID, some kind of an ID to identify you online. A little Wi-Fi signal, which is pretty much any kind of connection that you have, fingerprint, Bluetooth, cell phone, and then a vaccine. And then that leads down to a little arrow that turns into a little Bitcoin icon. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're looking at, all these little pieces they've been building over time, these data points they've been collecting on us. And I wanted to explain the thumbnail first, because all of this in this thumbnail is there for a reason. And I think Levi's going to lay out a pretty good argument today of why we know that that's true. And actually, you don't have to argue it, because the people doing it tell us about it. So, anyway, without further ado, I will hand it over to Levi for part 3 of the Hantavirus War Banking series. What's going on, brother? How you doing?
Jason, good evening. Good evening to everybody. And thank you for having me on today. I really, really appreciate it. This is probably going to be the most complex of the 3 to do, because what I'm going to be revealing here tonight, it's not the whole entire picture. Folks, try to understand that to give the whole entire picture, this show would probably be 8 hours long. We can't do that. So what I had to do is I had to try to go back to when what we're going through now today got kicked off. Just like I did with the Iran oil situation, bringing it back to a gentleman in the late 1800s. So what I did with the Hantavirus, showing it coming from the Korean Peninsula with the Korean War. So I've had to look at history, and what I was able to do is I was able to pinpoint a moment where things began to change in the whole picture of things that we could start at, which have a direct correlation on what's going on today. Is it the whole entire reason why what's happening? No, it is not. Okay. I'm going to be getting into what I refer to as the natural aspect of things. Okay. There's a whole different level in the spiritual realm as to what's going on. I'm not going to touch that tonight on Jason's show. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the natural, what's manifested from the spiritual kingdom.
I think
So,
I think in the fourth, Levi, I do want to touch on the spiritual, and I understand that may turn some people off, but I think it's worth addressing because this was
well,
written about. So yeah,
truth is truth, and
yeah.
sometimes truth cuts, wounds, and hurts, and it has to do that before it heals, delivers, and opens up the prison door so that you're able to escape.
We might call it
Again,
part 4 of the spiritual. And let
again, we're going to be presenting information to you folks tonight. The object of tonight is to get you to think and to get you to do your own research. And you might find some things that Jason or myself have not found that you can add to the discussion. But it's important that you look, reason, and you find out for yourself. So, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Where we're going to start, okay? And you can go ahead and bring the first one up for me, Jason, if you would.
gotcha.
Okay. This is a famous painting, and if you are a Civil War, United States Civil War, you know that this is Appomattox Courthouse, located in southwestern Virginia, on April 9th, 1865. After about a week of fleeing from the siege at Petersburg in Virginia, going through Richmond being destroyed, and Lee trying to escape westward. His army of then 8,000 men of the once proud Army of Northern Virginia was surrounded, and he knew that the right thing to do was to surrender his forces. And this is where we begin, because you can go to the next one, Jason. With Lee's surrender, okay, and then soon after, Johnson surrendered in North Carolina in May, and then there were later surrenders in Texas in June, and that ended the American Civil War. But the South was left in complete ruins. This is a picture of Atlanta, a part of Atlanta, okay, that was devastated by Sherman's march in 1864. You can go to the next one. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Here is
I'm trying to type at the same time. So
that's okay. Here is another example in the southern portions of the country that were heavily destroyed by the conflict. Okay, go to the next one. And this is a shot of Richmond, Virginia, which was burned to the ground during the attack. So if you can imagine, since most of the battles of the American Civil War were fought in the South and some in the border states, okay, you did have the Battle of Sharpsburg, as the South calls it, Antietam, as the North calls it, in Maryland. You had a battle at Harper's Ferry. You also had the Battle of Gettysburg, which was one of the turning point of the war in the North. That's about as much as the North had in terms of any type of land battles and damage to it. So the South laid in ruins. And contrary to what you had learned in high school, the United States government was dead broke because of the war. It had put extreme pressures on the federal government to sustain itself. They had levied income taxes to help pay for the war, but it still wasn't enough. And then, with basically a state of lawlessness in the South because of the war ending and then the rebuilding of the South, the federal government was bankrupt, and it was struggling each year to keep itself afloat.
Let me pop in real quick on that, Levi. If you read your history, and I know a lot of this from listening to Tony Arterburn and other people, I'm not a scholar at it, but when currency, I will say, when currency used to be backed by physical metals, they would physically move gold and silver from location to location to fund these different wars. It happened. I mean, it even happened during the Revolutionary War, but when we went off the gold standard, and this is kind of, I know we're talking about banking. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I don't want to derail you, Levi, but
no, you're fine. You're fine.
That gave them the ability to perpetually have war. And, there's some upside. There's some upside to war when you look at industry, because certain players that they pick to win, like people who build tanks and missiles and bombs and guns, arms, things like that. Even something as simple as gauze for your first aid kits and things like that, your MREs, the food you eat. There's a whole bunch of jobs it creates. However, they are printing the money now to create this industry, which devalues the money that those people are being paid, that then need to go to the grocery store and buy groceries and stuff like that. So it's a lot like the law of diminishing returns, and we're hitting that point now. And I think we're going to kind of get to that in this episode when we talk about stablecoin and digital currencies and things like that. But yeah, this is nothing new. They just don't want to have the hassle of actually having something, or a limited, let me rephrase it. They don't want to have a limited resource where they're bound by what you have. In your household and my household, we're bound by a budget that we have to keep because we only have so much to go around. And that's how the governments used to be. They used to have only so much to go around. And once that was, a train would take the gold out to wherever, or you'd ship it across to France or whoever's providing us whatever assistance, that physical currency is gone. It's gone. Now they just they print some more, and I'm afraid we're going to get into that situation in hyperflow when we get into a digital. And I didn't mean to derail you there. It's just a thought I had, Levi. So I thought
no, you're fine. You're fine. So what wound up happening? You can go to the next slide, Jason. Okay, is that the United States Congress, the American Civil War was actually caused behind the scenes by the Rothschilds family. The Rothschilds, which had been involved with the creation of the United States from the colonial days. One brother served the northern interests, another brother served the southern interests, and the idea was to destroy the United States, bring the North back into Great Britain, the South back into France. Because the Rothschilds were behind the First National and the Second National Bank, the First National Bank being defeated early in the 1800s, and then Andrew Jackson having destroyed the Second National Bank. The Rothschilds went after the country through the Civil War to gain control over the finances of it, and they wound up losing there as well. But in 1870, the United States was absolutely dead broke. And so this is where we experience the first knife wound of the United States with the next one, Jason, with what is called the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871. A lot of people.
Can you see it or not? It's not showing it on my screen. The next slide. Let me remove this one. There it goes. Go. Okay, yeah, okay. It was giving me a bug here. All I'm gonna have to. Can I drop the old slides real quick so it gives me?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, drop them off. So so I can.
Okay, continue on. I'm sorry. Production error here, folks.
A lot of people, including myself at one time, have called this the U.S. Corporation Act, and this is a little deceiving. Okay, it's not. It's the District of Columbia Organic Act, and part of this act, okay, what the United States government did, which they do not under the United States Constitution have the authority to do. They created what is known as the District of Columbia. And when they created the District of Columbia, they created it as a corporation. Okay, a corporation. And I'm going to read the opening paragraph of the act so you can see this. And this is part 6, I believe it's 62. An act to provide a government for the District of Columbia. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representation of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that all the parts of the territory of the United States, including within the limits of the District of Columbia, be and the same is hereby created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name is hereby constituted a body corporate business for municipal purposes, and may contract and be contracted with business, sue and be sued business, plead and be impleaded, again, business terms, have a seal, and exercise all other powers of a municipal corporation not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States and the provisions of this act. Now, here in this act, they established the District of Columbia to mirror in its jurisdiction a copy of the Constitution for the United States of America. They created a shadow. Now, there's one thing that needs to be brought out here, because there's a change of language that is included in this bill. If you read the original preamble of the Constitution, you will see that it says that the Constitution for the United States of America. For. And slowly after the turn of the century, it started to get changed. And first, they were using both for the United States and of the United States. Okay, and here's the key. Constitution for the United States of America, of the United States. When they used the of, they dropped of America off of United States.
Real quick question, Levi. I got it on the screen
Yes.
there. Will Two Box, what's going on, brother? Weren't the Rothschilds behind the American Revolution? Now I don't know that.
Yes, I can answer that question. The
Okay,
answer
I just
to
wanted to
that is
address that.
yes.
It's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how they got involved with it is because Alexander Hamilton married into the Rothschild family. And it was Alexander Hamilton whose idea was to have a standing army and a standing navy, but it was also through the Rothschilds, Alexander Hamilton, he forcefully tried to impose the first national bank on the fledgling states. They instead of the at the time, and Jason knows this through the Articles of Confederation, the money issue remained in the powers of the state. But when the Articles of Confederation were dropped and the Constitution for the United States of America was being developed, okay, there was not a push for a national bank.
So I'm going to go.
Alexander,
I'm going to say something here right now.
okay,
From an uneducated person's standpoint that hasn't researched this, I had heard about the Articles of Confederation. We actually even talked about it back when they used to actually have real stuff in school. The word Confederation sparks off a negative vibe because the Confederate soldiers, they were about slavery. The war was about slavery. In the North, the Union, it's kind of like the Axis and the Allies and stuff like that. It builds a mental picture. But the Articles of Confederation and the Confederate soldiers, that had nothing to do with slavery. But you build that in your mind. But if you look at the Articles of Confederation, and I actually had to learn this completely different topic. I was going through some college courses and had to read about the different forms of government and Articles of Confederation came up and I got educated on it. They spell our rights out more clearly than what we have now. There was nothing wrong with the Articles of Confederation except it did not fund a federal government. There was a lack of funding and there was no way to pressure a state. So let's say New York gets attacked by England or by whatever nation, and they called on, I don't know, New Hampshire to bring their troops to fight and to fund that fight because they had to fund it themselves. There was no way to enforce it. That's why the Articles of Confederation got tossed, because there was no enforcement method. We should have kept the Articles of Confederation because that would have kept it a true union. However, then all of a sudden you wind up doing something new, and now the states are kind of beholden to a beast that's been created. I shouldn't use the word beast. I know people are going to go somewhere with that, but this Leviathan that they've created, that now the states
that's the right word.
Yeah.
No, you're using the correct word.
Yeah, I just wanted to explain to people what the Articles of Confederation are, because the word confederation, for someone who doesn't know what they are, will immediately associate that with the Confederacy, which, if they're not educated, will associate that with slavery, and that's bad.
No, I mean the Articles of Confederation were the early 1780s, which were dropped off and was changed over to the Constitution for the United States of America. The idea, the first rumblings of the idea of a Confederate States of America actually happened in 1820 with the Missouri Compromise, and it was the first time that secession had actually come up as a discussion in the southern states, and eventually, 40 years later, in 1860, that led to the state of South Carolina seceding from the Union December 20th. So they, even though you hear the word confederation, it's not. Whereas the root meaning of the word confederation and confederate, okay, confederation means more than one in a block. Confederate means against federalization, okay, against. A confederate can be one, or a confederate can be as a group. But yes, the Rothschilds were okay. Involved with this nation from its very inception. The one thing about the Confederate Constitution, which is very, very interesting, is that the Southerners recognized the need for a line item veto. And they put the line item veto for the president in the Constitution. Now,
Another huge thing, another huge difference was that they needed to have a unanimous voting rather than a majority rules, which we moved from that into a not really exactly a democracy or 51%. You know, it's a 2/3 majority type thing is what we generally do, but it made it more easy to make changes. And we didn't want changes. They didn't want changes back then because that's what they had suffered with over time. And we're getting really far from the banking thing. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead. I just want to say this and I'll hand it back to you.
Okay.
Bronx Stomper, our friend Derek, who's been on the show before. Great interview, by the way. We got to get you back on, man. He dropped in a link for it's called the Confederate Constitution of 1861. I reposted it in the chat on Rumble and I pinned it at the top. So if you want, save that for later and watch it. I haven't seen it yet, but Derek's a trustworthy.
It is an interesting read. Like I said, they had the line item veto, the voting, and they also had set term limits for both the president and for members of the Senate and the House. Totally different, pretty much identical to the Constitution, but in certain areas they really limited what their officials could do. But I digress at this point. Getting back on track, what wound up happening is between the 1865 end of war and 1870, 1871 period, the Rothschilds, who were part of the Vatican at that time and also owned the British Crown. They still own the British Crown. Still involved with the Vatican as their official bankers. The U.S. government borrowed a lot of money from them, which brought the Rothschilds deeper into the workings of the U.S. federal government. Okay. And this is where the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871 enters the picture. Okay. They passed this legislation, Congress did, which they had no authority to do. Okay. Not to change the entire nation right off the bat, but to reorganize the District of Columbia, the 10 square mile, the federal territory, to set it aside as the seat of the government. Okay. They created it again as a municipal corporation, as a business. Now, it combined the separate city and the county governments. There's provisions in the bill for Georgetown and a couple of other areas which were not part of the incorporated city, okay, and how they deal with those, and created essentially a local government which was the same as the federal government, and that handled DC's affairs more manageably, but it combined the separate city and the county governments into one municipal corporate structure. And this is where the problem comes into. They created the corporation for municipal purposes, and they ran it like a business. Okay. And what this did is it brought out two side-by-side forms of government, which, unless you were involved in the system, you would not see it. The first one is known as de jure, D-E space J-U-R-E, government. A de jure government is the lawful constitutional aspect of the government, the Constitution for the United States of America. But then you have what is known as the de facto. And the de facto government, that's the legal, the corporate, and administrative end of government. So this is the beginning of the two governments, the one that's out in the open that everybody thinks they're living under, and then the shadow government, which is really what's in power and in force. And from 1871 to 1902, the federal government looked over the government of the District of Columbia and used that time to work the kinks out of the system. And it was in 1902 when the United States Congress created and passed the Bureau of Census. And in the Bureau of Census 1902 bill, the US government started to require and standardize birth certificates. Prior to 1902, birth certificates were dealt with on the state level. You would be born, it would be recorded in a register, and then the register would be copied and would be sent to Washington, D.C., and recorded for the purpose of carrying out the census. Prior to the 1902 Act, there was no Bureau of the Census. Every 10 years, the United States government would have to pass legislation to create a body to carry out the census and draw all information from those states in those years that a census was called to bring that information into Washington. From 1902 to 1915, the US government worked out the kinks with the Bureau of Census and the birth certificates. The federal government actually had a form that you had to fill out for your birth certificate. Now, there's a little interesting event that happened right before the 1915 Bureau of Census Act, or which is also known as the 1915 Birth Certificate Act, called Jekyll Island. For those of you who don't know, Jekyll Island is an island that's located offshore in Georgia.
Georgia. I've been there many times. Driftwood Beach is my favorite spot, but
Okay.
yeah, Jekyll Island.
And starting in 1910, the Rothschilds were dealing with many affluent Zionist Synagogue of Satan members and some true descendants of Abraham, chief entrepreneurs and rich people in the country. And the idea was to get the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, and others together. And the Rothschilds created what was called the idea of the Federal Reserve. The purpose of the Federal Reserve was to take the money out of the hands of the United States Treasury, which by Constitution is the one who is supposed to maintain the money. They are responsible for printing the money and coining the money. And the idea of the Federal Reserve and naming it the Federal Reserve was because if the people heard the word federal, they would believe that it was part of the US government. And as it was positioned as being part of the US government. There were three men, John Jacob Astor, Guggenheim, and Strauss. These three men were true descendants of Abraham. They were not Synagogue of Satan members, and they were against the creation of the Fed. These three men were on that faithful trip of the Olympic Titanic. And I'm not going to get into that dispute. I'm not going to get into that conspiracy. But those three men
that
made
would
sure
be
that they were
a
a
long
show and a
debate.
half. Yes.
Yeah.
They were on, they would be on that ship, the three men, John Jacob Astor, Guggenheim, and Strauss. And J.P. Morgan, who was one of those of the Zionist Synagogue of Satan, who was at Jekyll Island and part of the program, was the chief owner of the White Star Line. He was supposed to be accompanying those men on that ship, but 5 minutes prior to the ship taking off, he left the ship, claiming he was
like
sick.
a lucky Lutnick,
Okay.
Lutnick that didn't go
But
to the tower.
the day after the ship had already sailed, he was spotted in Paris walking around as if nothing had happened. Those three men were the only three men that stood in the way of the Rothschilds' plan to create the Fed. They killed them. Again, I'm not going to get into the conspiracy of the Olympic Titanic. Just know that those three men were on that ship because they needed to die. And when you actually do the research on the Titanic, okay, you will see the evidence points, and it shows you that these people, these evil miscreants, are willing to murder tens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of people to get their way.
That the Titanic, there's a lot of conspiracy around that, including that the liners were used to actually, the ocean liners actually used to carry munitions secretly, and they were casualty of war. And there's a lot of rumor behind that, but maybe we'll do a show on that someday.
So,
but yeah,
with the 1913 in the United States also brought in President Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was a Rothschild's patsy. The Federal Reserve Act, which by Congress, an act of Congress, was to pass, they had it passed on Christmas Eve with not the full Senate there, just enough to get the bill passed. Nobody read it, and the Federal Reserve became law. Now, this is very important because this is all part of what is happening today. That's why this is being brought out.
Isn't it interesting though, Levi, just so people can understand how they play these games? When it's something that's major, they will do this like on a holiday, Christmas Eve or something like that. And then when there's something that the people really want that they don't really want to address, they'll send everybody on recess, like the Epstein files, for instance, right? To bring it to today's stuff. If there's something, in fact, they'll send everyone on recess so that hopefully everyone forgets about it. But whenever it's something that's unpopular, or they don't want to be on record, they don't want people to know they voted on this thing. Like nobody, you're going to talk about the Clarity Act and the Genius Act, right? Nobody knew the Clarity Act had passed the House. I know it's still being worked in the Senate, but that passed. And then the Genius Act passed the next day, but nobody knew about the Clarity Act. And the Clarity Act is really where the rubber meets the road, as far as, and I know you're going to link us to that.
Yeah, we're going to get there. Okay,
Yeah.
but
Okay, I'll shut
well,
up now.
yeah, no, it's just like just what happened last week for Memorial Day. Okay, Johnson came into the House, and they were going to vote on the War Powers Act that the Senate just passed to stop Trump from fighting with Iran, saying his time was up. And Johnson shut down debate, shut down the vote, and put the House in immediate recess and left. Just walked out of the chamber. Didn't
Exactly what I'm
explain anything
talking
to
about.
anybody.
Yep.
And so right now, Trump can still do what he wants to do with Iran because the bill for the war powers to be suspended, it's in limbo. And there's nothing that there's just nothing that they can
I
do to
just want to
stop him.
I just want to clarify something with the war power stuff. It's supposed to give the president a certain amount of latitude if we are acting in a defensive manner, or if an ally is attacked that we have some kind of a reciprocal treaty with or something, that he has what, I forget how many days it is. Is it 60 days or something like that? Anyway, they take action without congressional approval. So you're basically at war without a declaration of war. But it's not for an ongoing, we are the aggressors, and then we attack for that a period of time, and then you're going to pause it, call a ceasefire, and then re-engage a day later, saying, "Oh,
Yeah,
the counter has been
yeah,
reset."
that's playing semantics with words.
It is, but
because that's not how it's 60 days. What you
yeah,
do in that
60
60 days is your 60 days.
And
But
if you haven't got a declaration by 60 days, you're to cease and desist. That is what
yes,
that's what the law says.
But again, we're not playing by the rules. So now you have, as I was saying, now you have the creation of the Fed. Okay, and later on in 1914, now Congress brings out legislation and passes the law for building permits. Prior to this, if you owned property, you could build anything you wanted on your property. Anything. You wanted to build a barn, you wanted to build a second house, you wanted to build anything you wanted on your property, you could build it. But now, okay, under federal law, they passed the requirement for building permit and structure at state level for building for taxation purposes. Okay, this was another way for them to get their hands in on your property.
I got to ask a question, Levi. I got to ask a question. So you say that's a federal thing to get permits to build? Because I know here I don't have to get a permit in Missouri. Well, if I'm in the city, I do, but I'm just outside city limits, and all I had to do was just locate. You know, I had to call the 411, the dig right people, locate the utilities to make sure, and that's more of a liability thing because I don't have to pay if I cut into a power cable or a sewer pipe or whatever. So I don't have to do that here. And it's the county that assesses my property, which I'm pretty sure my property tax is going to go up once they realize I have a workshop put in and I did a wraparound porch. They're going to value my property higher. Right now, I hope that they don't notice. I'm kind of flying under the radar. But I didn't know that there was a federal attachment to that valuation of your property. So where did that go back up again and say where that came from? Because I didn't.
Okay, the act, the name of the act is the Smith-Lever Act of 1914. Now the interesting thing is, okay, that although the act itself does not specifically state the building permit, those two words, okay, the language that's inside the bill and the purpose of the bill was to educate the states on the curation of property and the recording of such curation of property for the purposes of taxation. So what happened is the federal government created a bureau to work with the states to educate the states on the curation of property, and through that they would encourage the states to start taxing property, which then opened the door later for the federal government to excise taxes on property
Gotcha.
already being established by the states.
So they said,
So-
go take money from people, so that we could take money from you. That's basically
Yes,
what it comes down to.
that's correct.
Okay, gotcha.
That's correct. The Cranston Congress at that time got the states to do dirty work, lay the groundwork, and then the feds came in on top of it at a later time. So in 1915, with the Birth Certificate Act, the Bureau of Census Act, okay, all states now were required to use the federal form, and the I'm sorry, the control of people in recording who they were had to be standardized, because what would wind up happening in 1933 is that during the Great Depression, Roosevelt shut down the federal banking system. He shut it down for 3 days. And then he opened the banking system at the federal level. And this includes the Federal Reserve. So he opened up the Federal Reserve. The next day, he opened up the regional Federal Reserves. And then the third day, he opened up the national banks. And through these emergency powers, this is where the United States, in loans that they borrowed from the Federal Reserve, aka the Rothschild family, started to leverage the birth certificates, the labor, and this is the important part. This is where what we're dealing with today. The United States government put the wealth of the labor of its people up as collateral for the loans that they got from the Rothschilds.
And I want to talk about that for a second, Levi, and I might be
Go
putting the cart ahead of the horse here.
No,
But
you're really
what we're
not.
going to get into, and a lot of this is war. This is why we did this one last, because we did war on the last one, and this is very relative to war spending and profiteering by those attached to the war spending, right? Like people who make munitions and stuff like that. But excuse me, I forget where I was going. The collateral, you talking about the collateral of the people's earnings. I think what we're going to show tonight is that they're going to use the collateral now for this new system, which we're going to get to. It's going to be everything that you, your family, your legacy, everyone has saved, your property, everything. Courtney Turner has talked about tokenizing public land.
Yes.
Looking at how much gold might be in the dirt, or how much silver, or how much lithium, and they're going to assign a value to it. And this, because we are out of money, we are beyond bankrupt. We're bankrupted.
Oh, absolutely. And see, the reason why I brought the Federal Reserve in on this discussion, because as you know, okay, the the part of the Rothschild plan during the 19 teens, they brought out the 16th Amendment, which was the passing of the IRS and the federal income tax. And in the beginning, the federal income tax was only supposed to be on the upper wealthy people. It wasn't for all citizenry. It was for the upper echelon of people. They also passed the 17th Amendment. Now, the 17th Amendment is important because prior to that, this amendment is what changed the governor being responsible for selecting the 2 senators. It now changed into the hands of the people of that state, and the people would elect their senators. And the reason why they did that was because it was easier to fraudulently control the voting than it was to have one man as a governor appointed the senators, because not everyone would go along with the program. The country hadn't been deceived, beguiled, and bewitched enough yet to have total control over all executive, all legislative, and all judiciary from the federal level all the way down to the local magistrate level, for them, okay, to trust the people that they put in office would play ball their way. So what they did was they removed the power from the governors, gave it to the people where they could manipulate the voting. And as you may know, Stalin once said, I care not who casts the vote, but who counts the vote that matters. And you've seen that, okay, in recent elections where there has been nothing but voter fraud after voter fraud after voter fraud by both sides, okay, buying elections, manipulating elections, dead people voting, cats voting, dogs voting, even a dead Confederate company voted, okay, in a recent election.
So I
So
remember when I was I wasn't even into politics or anything. I was still pretty young, and I heard people talking about this. I was probably a teenager, maybe at the time, young, like a tween. I don't like the word tween, but it's a term now. But they talked about 32,000 ballots were tracked back to a single abandoned house, and this was suburb of Chicago area in Illinois. And I've heard multiple stories about this where, and I know Steven Crowder. I don't watch him anymore. I thought he was kind of funny, but I really don't watch him anymore. Only so many hours in a day. But he actually went out and found places where a lot of these ballots came from. I forget which contested state it was, but he actually went out there or sent someone out there to find the location of where these registered voters were. And it was like an empty parking lot or a closed down strip mall, like absolutely fraudulent. Now, can you prove? I think the big argument is, can you prove that is enough to sway an election? And our friend Billy Ray Valentine has made this argument, and I agree with Billy. We can prove that there's fraud on both sides. We can absolutely prove it, but is it enough to sway it? I don't know. The gerrymandering thing, though, is a massive manipulation. So there's 2 massive manipulations that we really need to focus on. There is.
I do want.
Let me finish real quick. We just saw this. We just saw this with Massey. Massey got. He should have won in a landslide, right? Thomas Massey. And was he in Tennessee? Is that where he's at? Tennessee. I know his
Kentucky,
voting record.
Kentucky. Kentucky 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Kentucky 4.
Now a lot of
District 4.
A lot of people say he's compromised. A lot of people say this and that and the other. I really don't care about his personal life. I'll be honest with you. I don't care. I look at his voting record, and he's like 90+% constitutional. He's been graded up to like 95, 96% constitutional on his voting record. That's all I care. I don't want an icon to be up there for me. I want a representative. Now, I'm not from Kentucky, but Kentuckians, he represents Kentuckians.
Well,
and
Massey, I know people are not going to be happy with me, but I'm just going to say this. Massey has all the telltale signs of controlled opposition. He was isolated, he was marginalized, and he was allowed to say what he said, but it went absolutely nowhere.
Well, the good thing that comes out of this is now he's going to be on a rampage to push for the stuff that was promised, like
Well,
Epstein
we'll have to
files. We'll
see.
see. It could be a
We'll have
distraction,
to,
though.
yeah.
It could be a distraction.
Honestly, okay, we have history of this in the past of people who have lost elections and they said that they were going to data dump everything, okay? But you know as well as I do, all it takes is one phone call, one visit, one threat, and they shut up and then they go away.
Or
So
unless you've lived your life like a saint, they're going to have a skeleton in your closet they're willing to
yeah.
throw out there.
So what's going to wind up happening, okay, is time will tell what Massey's going to do. I do want to. Bronx Stomper brought something out which is correct. Okay, when the income tax came out, it was only 1% on the top of Americans. Yes, the rich, for their real estate, their stock, okay, and their business dealings. It was not a wage tax. Okay. Wage taxes didn't come till much later, but what people have to understand is that the whole purpose of the federal income tax to be created was to place a yoke on the American people in time through taxation, fees, then eventual bank loans, okay, interest. And again, this gets into the taxation of your labor, because that's all that is.
And let me throw this in here because we're kind of going off on a tangent here, but our last segment, our last show we did was on war, and the income tax. Since we're talking about income tax right now, income tax was to support a war, right? We were all in on a war that nobody really wanted, but we got in on it. And this goes to how Levi had said, you know, this wasn't not like all 50 states got together and voted, let's go to war. We just kind of went to war. Maybe a lot of the states said, okay, we're going to get involved with this, but you know, there's a lot of back and forth between the federal and the state. It's a deep issue to talk about. The thing is, the federal income tax was supposed to be for a war. So that's where the banking and the war connected. And it was supposed to go away, but it never went away. In fact, it increases every year.
It did. Yes. And this is why I went back and I looked at all of this, okay, because the goal through the creation of the Fed, the birth certificate, the building permits, the IRS, and the senators, okay, it's all towards the love of money, which is the root of all evil, and it came out in 1933 with the Emergency Bank Act, okay, with the loans that Roosevelt took from the Rothschilds. Okay, he put the people's labor, the value of their labor, up as collateral. And it's the first time that the idea of the shadow government of a corporation, the de facto, came out, but people still were not able to put it together because these evil people created scenarios such as the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, and other things that kept the people's attention occupied on other things like survival, that when they did what they did, okay, people wouldn't notice.
Let me
when
wrap
the
this up.
when the act was passed in 1933, they passed it the same day it was written. And the overwhelming majority of both the House and the Senate didn't even have a chance to read it. They just signed it, put it through.
Got to pass it to find out what's in it. That's a Pelosi statement. Let me wrap this up real quick in my thoughts, my quick nutshell thoughts. When it comes to the Federal Reserve, which is not federal whatsoever, it's a private industry that the government contracted to produce currency for us to exchange, minting coins, printing dollars, things like that. Let's just say Levi is the Federal Reserve that I have contracted out. And I say, Levi, I need you to make me $1 million $1 coins, right? $1 million. Levi says, sure, I'll do that. It's going to cost you so much, right? So now I've got the $1 million plus the overhead, which is maybe he charged 5%. So 1.05 million. And, I say, I don't need your services no more, Levi. I can never pay Levi off because I have to pay him back in those same coins that he minted or gold, one or the other, right? So I don't know what the deal is between the federal government and the Federal Reserve, how they were supposed to be paid for their services. But the thing is, in order to pay it back, you have to get more money printed, and it's an ongoing thing. And as this goes on, if you're making money like that, you're like, holy crap, it's like a predatory loan type situation. It really is. If you think about, a payday loan or a car title loan type thing, this is exactly, I'm trying to put it on a scale that people living in the everyday world can understand. It is a payday loan type thing that the government has gotten into, and they've realized that if they can orchestrate war, then they need the federal government to come in and get more predatory loans so they can make more money and more money. However, the government can never pay them back. So now they have to take it directly from the people. And that's where we're going to get into the digitization, the tokenization, the taking of, and I hate to bring this out, Levi. I just want to try to move us along because we're getting really
I understand.
deep into the weeds here. But yeah, they basically, the federal government can no longer generate money without complete and utter revolt from the people, because they've already stolen from us through property tax, through income tax, through inflation, through the inflation of cost of goods, right? Shrinkflation, everything. We can see that a single man working almost a barely above minimum wage job could support a family and have a house and end up setting himself up for some kind of a retirement on his own, but they take it over. You got to pay your Social Security tax, Medicare, Medicaid, all this stuff, because we're going to be your nanny. But yet the government fails every time. So what they're going to wind up doing, the government has nothing left. They have nothing left. They're creating this new stable coin. And the stable coin is going to be what takes it's like sucking the last bit of blood out of everybody, because they've taken as much as they can take without a massive revolt. So what they're setting up next, and like I said, you look at the thumbnail, they have all this stuff put in place. I mean, they're going to tax you on everything as much as they can, carbon, how much you travel, how much fuel you buy, all this other stuff. They're going to tax you little by little by little. But at the same time, whatever you do keep is going to be owned by somebody else. It's going to be controlled by somebody else. That's going to back their fake stable coin. So your house that you paid for, you paid off, and you're still paying property tax on, that is an asset that backs stable coin. It's going to be. And anyway, I'm sorry, Levi. I'm just trying to get
No, you're okay.
across.
Just a couple of things I'm going to bring out, and then we're going to start getting into something to the modern times, because once Roosevelt did what he did, there wasn't much change that went on. Things continued to move accordingly. Okay. The idea of citizenship in the United States was not a term that existed prior to 1866, when the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments were passed in order to deal with the former slaves. The term U.S. citizen was not used in legal circles. Not until that time. Okay. And it actually created a class in the country and a political status for the newly free slaves who were granted their citizenship. And the next thing I wanted to bring out as we're
You
dealing
want,
with
Derek wants to know, Bronx Stomper wants to know which
we're
roads
dealing with FDR.
Okay.
FDR. Okay. In 1915, in the birth certificate act, the Bureau of Census, okay, I wanted to share something from a book that was written. It's called The Story of the Census, and this is a book that was put out by the United States government in giving the story of the census back then, and it talks about passing the bill in March of 1915. And in that year, the census office became a permanent branch of the Department of the Interior under the name Bureau of the Census. However, I'm sorry, that's in 1902. 1902. I apologize. 1902. But in 1913, it was changed from the Department of the Interior and placed under the Department of Commerce and Labor. Okay. There again, all right, is your predecessing step to acquiring the knowledge in order to tax your labor, claim your labor.
Well, and that's the point. And I know people don't want to get a massive history lesson here, but I think it's important that we did go back. But the point is where we're going, and where we are going. If we take a look at AI and data centers, which is kind of where we're going with this, this is the ultimate form of doing what they've done manually for years. They're going to do it through technology. And I know we're going to get there eventually, Levi. I just don't want people to think it's history lesson.
At this point, we're going to move up to 1990, because packed away in Title 28, Section 3002, okay, subsection 15 definitions, you will find that the United States Code defines United States in the context of federal debt collection and procedures. And the United States is defined in the bill as a federal corporation. This is a law passed by Congress. They define the United States as a federal corporation, a business. And B, an agency, department, commission, board, or other entity of the United States. And C, an instrumentality of the United States.
So let me try to make this simple and see if I'm connecting the dots here. The United States is a corporation. The corporation is on the hook for its debts. The people, because of birth certificates, are members of that corporation, which means you're actually on partially on the hook for that debt. Is that where you're going?
Yes.
Okay.
You have,
and they're going to,
let
me go one step further here, because I've heard this argument before, and I think it's true. The U.S., the people who represent us, can put us into debt throughout the world. With it's actually with the Federal Reserve, to be honest with you, but they put us into debt, and because we're members of this organization, the debt falls on the shareholders. Let's look at it that way. We're shareholders, right? So we either profit or we lose with this corporation, and that means that our assets can be garnished or taken to cover that debt. And that's where all this digitization and stuff that we're coming into today,
you got it.
Tokenization, is going to be sucked up to cover the debt that they've incurred.
You've got it.
Okay, so I'm trying to make this so the layman can understand.
So what you have.
Can I get 2 minutes, Levi? If you can talk for a little while, give me a couple minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll be back in a second. I'm just trying to break it down like layman style, because I understand it. Big picture, it's just really hard to portray it. It really is hard to portray it without putting it into like layman terms. That's where Franco has been really good about with his Tigers Den show. He could put the finances into layman's terms. So I'm trying to do the same here. So we'll see if people get it or not. Leave us comments to let us know if you got the idea. But it is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's what you've been telling me, Levi. You can't see it.
That is correct. You've had, some call it the deep state. Okay, you've had the Juno, which is the real United States that's supposed to be operating us as sovereign citizens under a real constitution, but you have running parallel the United States operating as a business, as a corporation de facto, okay? And what FDR did back in 1933 was he leveraged everybody's labor, your wages, your homes, your personal property, everything of you. And every human being since 1933 that has been a U.S. citizen, they are leveraged and used as collateral. And that's why when you look at Congress and they're spending and making drunk sailors look innocent, that's why they spend and spend and spend and spend and spend, no matter how much the people cry out and say, stop spending. They do it because they're leveraging against you. They're leveraging against your wages, your property, everything, so that you're already hearing now, okay, like Peter Thiel spoke with Greg Abbott, the governor, okay, for these data centers, we got to build them. And if we can't build them through normal means, we're just going to take the people's checking accounts. We're going to take the people's savings accounts. We're going to take the people's 401k. They're so bold now that they are bringing out what they've been doing all along. They will, and that's the whole point. I know when you hear Klaus Schwab say, "You will own nothing and you will like it," it's because he knows that the de facto U.S. corporation has leveraged your labor against everything. And they're going to take everything because that is their collateral. They own everybody. And there is a way to get out from under it. I'm not going to get into that, but it's not the way of sovereign citizens. It's a different way, but it's impossible. It's impossible now. You can't get away from this. And when they bring out the CBDC, which we're going to talk about here real shortly, they're going to wind up taking everything from you. And they've got their hooks in you through property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, state level taxes, fees, mortgage interest, credit cards, student loans, car loans, recreational vehicle loans. Okay. It's they have deceived people through what they call the American dream, which is really the American lie, and have locked people into being slaves to the lenders. And yes, we can overcome this. We have to overcome this through faith, but it's much more than just faith. It's coming out from among them, separating yourselves from them. Touch not the unclean thing. Come out of her, my people, partake not in their sins, and receive none of her plagues.
I
But
want
that's the spiritual aspect of it, and I don't want to get into that tonight.
No, we could do that on the follow up, but I want to say something. Sorry, I had to dip away for a second. But people talk about if we just all stand up together, you know, that you're going to be swatted like a fly, right? If you try to stand up on your own. But what I've decided to do, and I made this decision, I am no longer filing for a tax return. I'll give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And if they want to come after me saying I owe them money, why should I become a CPA? Why should I have to hire somebody and spend my money to get money back or to prove that I owe money? I'm just going to leave it up to them, and they can spend their time and effort to prove that I owe money. And if I owe money, okay, I'll give it to you. Give unto Caesar what's Caesar's. It's money. But they're getting beyond that. They're getting to where they're going to actually have, just imagine the deed to your home, the title to your car, everything that can be tokenized and become an asset will become what backs. And that we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the stable coin and what that's actually backed by. It's going to be everything, every natural asset that we have that you don't even own. It's federal land, which federal land should not be a thing. Federal land is supposed to be garrison, right? So like your bases, the Washington, D.C. and territories. That's it. So when you have a national park, that's actually not constitutional. It's not constitutional. That belongs to the people. If the minimum, it should just belong to the state. And that's a big point of contention. But
it's a huge land grab, and look where they grabbed land. They grabbed land in areas where people could escape to, where they could hide out, get away from these people. They took away large swaths of land which were purposeful to raise cattle.
It's also large swaths of land that have huge mineral deposits, by the way, that they can tokenize.
Yes, that's correct. That is correct.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking already lithium mines and cobalt mines and stuff like that. The only reason we're not doing it right now to boost our economy is because they played this stupid grift about global warming. And, you know, if we were to physically see, like, let's just say the Tesla Cybertruck. I'm going to say it. Okay, Elon, I'm on X right now. Kick me off. I really don't give a shit. Your truck sucks. Okay. And if people saw the child labor that goes into it, the diesel machinery that goes into it to get all these these different rare earths, the processing of it, the amount of energy that goes into it, and how long the battery actually lasts, they would understand it is a net loss on saving in energy. But it makes a lot of people a lot of money. But we could do that here and bring the cost down. If you did want a stupid Cybertruck, if you wanted a dumpster to drive around, you could do that here a lot cheaper if we built it here. The problem is that they want to tax us on carbon as well. And they don't want us to see. So they wanted to incentivize Elon to make money on this green stuff. Not just Elon, GM did the same thing. Ford, they finally came up on Ford with their F-150 Lightning. It's not selling. It has to be government subsidized. But everybody was making money off the green grift, that the solar panel companies, the windmill companies, everybody was making money off of this thing by gaslighting us, saying, this is the way of the future. It's better for the earth. But if we actually saw here in the United States what it takes to get this technology, everybody would quickly realize this isn't good for the economy. It's not good for the environment at all. It's actually horrible for the environment. And then how do you recycle the stuff? You can't recycle half of it. And if you do, it takes more energy to do that, which is fossil fuel, if you want to call it fossil fuel, whatever. It takes that. So I've covered this a lot. I don't want to go into it too deep. It just blows my mind that, what they've done is they've, let me get back on track here. Sorry, I got distracted for a couple minutes, but to get back on track with what we're talking about, the areas that they have set aside as federal lands have those mineral resources. So there's going to be a point where we're going to be broke, flat broke, and they're going to have to use that to tokenize to make our digital coin worth anything. And everyone's going to have to go along with it, where they would have not gone along with it before, even if they bought into the green grift BS. They're going to have to go along with it because they want to feed their family with, lab grown meat and stuff. I digress big time. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. All right. So here what I'm going to start us out with in getting up into today. So let me just recap real quick. All right. The Civil War ended. The nation was in huge debt. They were in debt to the Rothschilds. They came up with the Organic Act of 1871, which created the shadow government of the District of Columbia. From then to 1902, they perfected that government, got all the kinks out of it. 1902, they create the Bureau, the Census Bureau, and they put birth certificates as one of the primary responsibilities of the Census Bureau. 1913, we have the creation of the Fed. 1913, we have the Census Bureau being placed under the Department of Commerce from the Department of the Interior to Commerce and Labor. We have the 1915 Bureau Census Bill, the Birth Certificate Act, which required all states to use the federal form to process birth certificates. 1933, we have the Emergency Financial Act, which shut down all the banks for 3 days. And then Roosevelt borrowed tons of money from the Rothschilds through the Federal Reserve that he put the labor of the people as collateral, and all future generations as collateral. And this was being done through birth certificates as the recording receipt of a person being born.
Yeah. And I just do want to reiterate, to link this to the other shows, the state of emergency, whether it be a coronavirus outbreak, which is the Hantavirus now, they're trying to rebrand it into Ebola again. We had the swine flu, we had the bird flu, we have all this crap that sucks government money, and then we have war that sucks government money. The money is printed, and that comes out. It's been slowly bleeding out from us. I think we're about 95% of the dollar has been lost since we went off the gold standard. So all that savings has been taken away. They're taking it away through property tax, through Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, which is pretty much insolvent at this point. I think 2027 is when it's supposed to be insolvent. Anyway, the point is, we're eventually going to get to it, folks. I'm sorry, but when we get to the digitization of everything, that's the final, where they take that's the final, where they not only take what you've earned, your stored labor in various different means, but they're going to take everything you will ever earn. They basically own everything. And I did talk about the land. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just trying to push this along, Levi, to get us to
that's okay.
where we're going.
That's fine.
And the security, the surveillance, track and trace network, the facial recognition, everything like that, internet ID and everything is part of this. It's part of knowing what you do. I mean, they're going to look at you at some point and say, this person has an IQ of this and has this degree. their lifelong worth is X. And they're going to look at another person and say their lifelong worth is X. And when it comes down to medical treatment, that's going to be the decision factor, whether they should keep person A or person B around, because it's a bottom line, like on a spreadsheet. How much is it worth? So I'm just saying it's not even a question of if it's coming, it's a question of when. So anyway.
So this brings us up now to January of 2025. Okay. And a series of 3 bills. You have what's known as the
Let me know
Stable
if
Act.
you want me to share the screen, Levi. I see you have a screen
Nope.
up.
No
Not yet.
problem.
You
Not
want me
yet.
to share it?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We've got the Stable Act. We've got the Genius Act, and the third part is the Clarity Act. Now, before these 3 came into play, Trump did something that was key. And if you could show the screen for me, Jason. This is Executive Order 14178, the Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Financial Technology. This was issued by Donald Trump. And I want to bring you down to Section 5. Taking measures to protect Americans from the risks of central bank digital currencies. Okay. Which threaten the stability of the financial system, individual privacy, and the sovereignty of the United States, including by prohibiting the establishment, issuance, circulation, and use of a CBDC within the jurisdiction of the United States. Right here
Can
in
I
this,
ask you something real quick, Levi? I
yes,
think the people in the audience might have the same question. When was this written?
this was written January 23rd, 2025,
Okay.
before any of the 3 acts were presented before Congress.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because what you just read to me, people were not liking the idea of a CBDC because it had been going around the internet for a while and people were warning about it. And we had FedNow, which I had already reported on. FedNow had its social media pages created 10 years before anybody heard the name FedNow, so we know it's a long-term plan. But talking about the specific wording, the verbiage in this, no, maybe verb is not the right word, but the wording in this said, talked about what is it? The stability. So CBDC was kind of like, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh god. Oh, well, we have something. We have a stable coin. So I think
Yeah.
that the wording in here is to set us up for a rope-a-dope, right?
It is exactly. Okay. What Trump did in this paragraph, okay, is he made it sound like he was an American hero and that he was going to protect American citizens from the big bad wolf of central bank digital currencies. But notice this is not a law that is passed. This is an executive order. Big difference. But what we're going to find out in the 3 bills, the Stability, the Genius, and the Clarity Act, is that Trump is placing the stablecoin authority into the hands of the Federal Reserve, which is the agency whose parent, which is the Rothschilds, through their avenues in other countries, are responsible for bringing the CBDC into fruition. So basically, Trump lied through his teeth to make himself look like a hero. Think of the big fat cat who extends his hand out to shake it with a big cheese-eating grin on his face, and his left hand is behind his back with his fingers crossed, because he's setting you up. And that's exactly what this is. Because the Federal Reserve is not attached to the federal government. It is a private Rothschild enterprise that has yoked this country. And he's going to give control of the stable coin, which Trump is saying will be separate and will not pose a danger to the financial system, to individual privacy, or to sovereignty of the United States. But yet he's putting the stablecoin right in the hands of the Federal Reserve. And you're going to find in the legislation writing, okay, where Trump's Genius Act, okay, basically says, where is it? Let me get it. Oh.
Let's go over the Genius Act real quick. I got to get us moving, man.
Okay.
Genius Act, because there's the Genius Act, there's the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is the one I've been focused on that nobody's really talking about, other than, like I said, Courtney Turner has covered it. I talked to her about it, and she was like, exactly, it's that is what gives teeth to the Genius Act, and there's a reason for that. But go ahead. Don't let me. I just wanted to make sure we're moving along. I don't want to keep people all night.
No, to part of the Genius Act, okay, is a permitted payment stablecoin issuer shall be treated as a financial institution and shall be subject to all federal laws applicable to a financial institution located in the United States, including policies and procedures to block, freeze, and reject specific or impermissible transactions that violate federal or state laws, rules, or regulations. Technical capabilities, policies, and procedures to block, freeze, and reject specific or impermissible transactions that violate federal or state laws, rules, or regulations. So the big thing that came out, as many of you may remember, was the cry about vaccine mandates. A mandate is not a law. A mandate is the equivalent of a suggestion. But under the language of the Genius Act, not only for a vaccine mandate, but for any mandate they put out, social credit score, social media that they don't like that you put out, your cat did something they didn't like, you wore the wrong color socks, whatever reason they could give you, they will be able to lock you out of their system. You will have no access to money, no way to pay your bills, no way to pay your taxes, no way to buy food, nothing. You will not be able to go to the bank. You will not be able to go to the stores. You will not be able to go into government buildings. You will not be able to do anything.
So I do want to throw something out there, because this is an interesting point. This happened last year when I was in Colorado. My wife went into to get a couple bottles of water. We were in I think we were in Pueblo at the time, going to the park, which has a zoo in it and stuff like that. And she pulled over at a gas station to get a couple bottles of water, and I filled up the tank while she was in there, and she was in there forever and ever and ever. And she finally came out. I was like, holy crap, what happened? Why were you in there for like 25, 30 minutes? And she said there was a guy in line that had $100 bill that was buying some stuff in the gas station. You know, it was a convenience store / gas station. And they said we can't break anything over a 20. I think it was not the best part of town. So, sure, they have one of those little boxes that they drop the cash in so they can't be robbed because they can't get to it. But anyway, I was like, that's Absolutely. So basically what happened was the guy sat there arguing with the people, but he had his stuff and he wanted to check out. So everybody was piling up behind him in line. And finally, somebody in line had enough physical cash on him to break his 100 down to a 20. And the guy was able to check out and leave. And I told my wife that is absolutely absurd. It's legal tender. Everyone's supposed to take it. And I got home. When I got back home here to Missouri, I was going to cover this on one of the shows, one of the Nights of the Storm shows. So I looked it up and I did a lot of research into it. It actually turns out that private businesses do not have to take it. They do not have to take cash if it says legal tender. The only people that have to take legal tender is governmental agencies. So let's say I go to the courthouse or I go wherever, I go to the assessor, the county assessor, and I want to pay my property taxes in cash. They have to take cash. They physically have to take cash, but a private business does not. And that's a misconception that I had. And, I found out by doing the research, and a lot of people have that misconception. So this is where we see, and I'm getting to my point here. Once everything goes away from, it goes to a public-private partnership where everything is contracted to a private thing, they don't have to take the cash, and they could require a different form of payment, such as a digital currency. And that's where our government has been headed to for quite a while now. Like, let's just look at NASA, right? I know we don't pay bills to NASA, but NASA was a federal agency. But now NASA contracts out to SpaceX. So if whatever service I need to go to space, I don't go to NASA and pay them in cash. I go to SpaceX to get my rocket ride up to space. I know this is kind of an absurd example, but it's just one that you can understand. Everyone can understand. They could say, we don't take cash here. I'm sorry, you have to pay in your digital token to get to space. And, oh, I'm sorry, our records show that you've exceeded your carbon credits for the month, so you don't get your space ride. That's where, I know it's, like I said, it's kind of a big, absurd example, but it's an easy way to see where it's going. It's going to happen on a minute scale as far as, trying to get somebody to mow your grass. Maybe they can't accept your money because you're using your cell phone to do a transfer of digital currency, and it won't allow you to pay that person because you've already mowed your grass too many times this month. You're exceeding your carbon credit. That's kind of where I see things going. Maybe I'm absurd. I don't know. That's just kind of how I see it going.
The interesting thing is, okay, the Brownstone Institute put out an article back in March of 2025 called The Stablecoin Trap, the Backdoor to Total Financial Control. And this gentleman speaks about his research. And one of the things that he found was 92% of all US dollars exist only as entries in databases.
Yeah,
Ones
it's
and
not
zeros.
real. It's not real.
Okay.
Yeah.
8% of all US dollars that have been printed are in the hands of the people. 92%, it is all digitized.
Let me tell you a quick story. And I hate to hijack the show, Levi. I know it's your show, but this is important.
Jason, this is your show. I'm here. I'm trying to do the best I can.
No, I'm
I
just
fully admit that, I fully admit, okay, that the financial aspects, it's not my strong point. So I'm grateful and thankful that you're putting in your 2 cents here because it's a lot to uncover.
So, and this is kind of a pivotal thing because we already said that people don't, I know that people don't have to take the US dollar, and they don't want to take the US dollar anymore. Everyone wants digital stuff now, and the digital stuff isn't safe either. But here's what I witnessed. My stepson was trying to buy a home. He's getting on his feet from, rough life, whatever. We were trying to help him out. So he's like, I got approved for a loan on this house. It was a really crappy, tiny house, but at least it was going to be his own place. And he got approved for the loan, except they said no, because he had just bought a car and they found out about a car note that he had. It was from a predatory loan place. He paid way too much for the car. And he came to us and said, I can't get this house loan because I still have this loan in this car, and they think it's high risk. So I said, okay, what can we do to help? We basically needed to pay his car off. And my wife and I were not comfortable with taking our savings, because it was quite a bit, and just paying his car off and not having that money in the bank as a emergency fund type thing, right? So I got to talking to the bank, and plus, his interest rate was ridiculous. So I went to the bank and I said, what can we do? Now, this is where people need to pay attention to this. It gets weird. They're like, what you can do is you don't actually have to spend the money today. What you can do is put it into a CD or something, basically something that it would lock it up where I don't have access to it, but it still is on my asset, on my books as being money there. And I just basically can't draw on it. And then the payment would come out every month until the car is paid off. At the same time, now pay attention, folks. So the money's in my account, right? And they took that money as collateral, not collateral, as backing or whatever, and then paid the car off. So they basically created money out of thin air. So the money existed in two places at once. In my account, which I can't touch, but it's numbers on their ledger and numbers on my ledger. I can't touch it, but it also went on the lender of the vehicle. It went on their ledger and paid the vehicle off. How is that possible? Now, this is happening millions of times a day in the United States. This is why we're broke, because that money's created out of thin air. People are waking up to this. They're waking up to this, and the world is waking up to this. Those who hold U.S. treasuries and stuff like that, they're waking up to it. Like, hey, there's all this money out there, but it's not really out there.
Yeah, because you had blacked out your screen, so I didn't know if you had actually walked away or not. But what I had said during that time was the reason why they keep spending the money in Washington the way they are is because they know that they have your labor as collateral for their spending, so they can spend it all because they're calculating out your property value, your cars, your boats, your RTVs, ATVs, your possessions, your jewelry, your 401ks, your S&P 500s, your bonds, everything you own. They know it's theirs. And so they're just taking it. And it's now reached a point with inflation, okay, that people are losing their houses because their property taxes are going through the roof. Okay, their home insurance is going through the roof. It's affecting their mortgage payments. Their dollar isn't going very far. Gas prices are up. Food prices are up. Medical costs are up. They can't afford it.
Well, the thing is,
that's the problem.
It's gone beyond taking. Now there's going to back, and when this stable coin rolls out, they're going to back it on the potential. So they're stealing from the future. And that's where you're going to get access to X, Y, and Z based off of your potential.
Well, they're doing that now. They're doing that now, but it's what people are going to be shocked is when the no buy sell, okay, comes out.
It's going to come out.
Okay, which it is going to come out very shortly.
Well, that's why I brought up the story. That's exactly why I brought up the story. And that's kind of a teaser for when we do the spiritual one, the follow-up on the 3-episode thing we're doing. The teaser was that story about, the gas station incident with my wife, because they don't have to take your cash. They're going to require whatever the form is that's easier for them. I mean, I've had people that would come out and do work, cut my grass. When I was selling my house in Georgia, I had a lot of contractors come out and do little things to pretty the house up and fix little things so I could sell it for the maximum. I wanted to be in prime shape, right? Most of those people, almost every single one of them, preferred that I pay them with PayPal or Cash App or Venmo. And I'm like, I don't have none of that. Now I have a PayPal now for Knights of the Storm. And that's just in case people tip. They can do PayPal, but I really don't like the intrusiveness of how much information they gather on you. And I know we're going to get into that. Hopefully, we might have to just break this up into two episodes, to be honest with you, Levi, because we're not even getting close to touching the AI and the data center aspect and all the intrusiveness of your data. But that's what people wanted.
No, but
I actually had to pay a premium. I had to pay if I paid in cash, they wanted me to pay a premium. And I'm like, really? That's ass backwards, right? Because in cash, you could just say you didn't do anything here and not be taxed on it.
Yeah, and Jason, I want you. Look, I know that the beginning stuff, getting to the root of the thing and the problem, can be really boring and tedious because you're waiting for all the dots to be connected.
Yeah, it
But
just
see, what
takes a
people
long
don't,
time.
yeah, what people don't understand is they just don't pop this stuff. This plan that they have carried out, this is not something that they thought of overnight. What people don't understand, and this is a spiritual aspect, is that Satan's greatest asset is time. Mankind thinks they have all the time in the world, but they don't. But yet, time is his greatest asset because he knows that we always put off and always put off and always put off.
And I'm going to throw something else in there as well on top of that.
He's so subtle that he can use time to carry things out so smoothly and while occupying your mind that if you're not paying attention, he pulls things off, and that's what he's been doing.
Well, one thing to talk about the time aspect, and I don't want to get into the spiritual today. We're going to do that.
I know.
But I will throw this in there to caveat what you said. If you see a family, a legacy family that is making that are making generational decisions that they know that they're not going to see the fruit of whatever they're doing, and their grandchildren won't see it, but eventually it will be seen. They're not thinking; they're thinking as well. The time situation. So they're not making decisions based off of what's best for right now to care for my family. There's another plan. There's another agenda behind it, and there's something else behind it. I'm just going to say that. Just use your own judgment. If you see people that are trying to start a business to hand over to their children, that's pretty honorable. If you're seeing someone that's doing all this stuff that they're not going to see it, their kids aren't going to see it, their grandkids aren't going to see it, but it's eventually going to get to somewhere, there's something behind that. Because your children should be your first and foremost. But these families you're talking about, they're looking very, very long term. And I'll say this about the Chinese as well. The Chinese had like 150 year plan. They're thinking about, and I'm not just talking about war, I'm talking about finances and industry and stuff like that. They have a long-term plan. That is something outside of a person, something outside of people. It's another entity, which for them is their nation, right? But these other individual people, what is their entity that they're doing this for? So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to really get into the spiritual, but people can connect the dots on that. Are you there, Levi?
Yeah, no, I was just explaining, and this is something they were talking about fractional reserve banking, and this is something that Anshel Rothschild taught his 5 sons, and they have taught their sons in generations, as you were talking about. Okay, and that is that whenever you do a business transaction, you get paid out from both ends of the transaction. And that's what fractional reserve banking is, because the way it works, and I'm going to use the example that they put in the chat. If somebody comes in and deposits $10 into the into their account. The bank holds $1, and that goes in the general fund. But the $9 gets put in with the rest that's pulled out, and that goes to the Fed. And the bank makes money for all the money that is deposited back to the Fed, which is the stealing of your labor. The banks get paid a dividend on that. But when the banks if you go into a bank and you tell them I need to pull out $25,000, they have to call up the Fed, they have to order the $25,000, it comes in several days later, you have to fill out a form, okay, sign for your money, and then you leave. Well, the Federal Reserve charges the banks. So they get it. The Rothschilds are getting the money both ways. They're getting money off of the stolen labor that goes to them, and they're getting off the interest that the banks have to pay for the money that they have to borrow from the Fed. And they're bilking trillions of dollars.
Well, the interest is one way. The interest is a one-way thing. Interest goes one way, but you don't get it the other way. I mean, I get a little bit of interest on my savings. That's going to go away with stablecoin, and we need to move on to that, man. We're getting really long here.
Okay. I mean,
I'm looking at this right now. What is this? This is the stablecoin yield debate. This is from Congress.gov. I sent this to Gardner Goldsmith. I was hoping he would read through it. I know it's kind of a dry read, but it says in July 2025, the Congress passed the Genius Act, establishing a regulatory framework for payment stablecoins. So they're basically trying to do away with cash, with the dollar. They're trying to replace it. That's what this is about. These digital assets use the same technology as cryptocurrencies, and I have a list of what's going to back that, by the way, which is going to blow your mind, but are backed by assets and their value. So they're using cryptocurrencies. As a matter of fact, I'll throw this on the screen. I'm going to kind of take over for a minute. So right here, it says that it requires, and it sounds good. When you read it, it sounds great. But when you dig in and go 2-3 layers deep, it's horrible. Among the requirements in the Genius is a restriction on stablecoin issuers. Wait, I went too far. The digital assets use the same technology as cryptocurrencies. So they're saying we're like a Bitcoin, let's just say, but are backed by assets and their value. Unlike that of cryptocurrencies. Well, guess what they're backed on? Other cryptocurrencies. Here they are. What are those cryptocurrencies backed on or backed by? Faith. And they're valued in the US dollar. So what do their value go down to if the dollar goes away and we're on this new coin? It's like a circular logic thing. It doesn't make any sense. That's where the tokenization of real assets, such as your property, nationally held lands that have, gold or silver, unmined stuff, resources in there. That's what it's going to be backed by. There is nothing. What are you going to back this stupid stable coin in? It's not going to be gold, because I haven't seen them open Fort Knox yet and say that we have something to back it. That would be great if we did a digital currency that was actually backed by gold and there was no fractional reserve banking involved. That would be great. But here's the second part of this. This thing is, let's see. It is intended to be stable against the dollar. The stable coin is backed by the dollar. At the end of the day, until they back it by assets, it's going to be backed by the dollar, whether it's through a third-party link like a Bitcoin or a Tether or whatever. It's going to be backed by the dollar. Among the requirements established, and this is what really gets my goat, if I'm reading this correctly, among the requirements established in Genius is a restriction on stablecoin issuers paying interest or yield or rewards. Does that mean that if I if I have some asset that they consider a digital asset, like let's just say Bitcoin, for instance, and Bitcoin is backing the new dollar, the stable coin, that I can't get interest on that. Because I guarantee you, if I go borrow some stable coin, they're going to charge me interest, but I get no interest. It's almost like that now. I get such a low rate of interest. I get like 2.5% max on my account. And I've had my bank actually called me one time and says, you have your savings in here. That's my retirement savings. They're like, could be considered putting it into this other fund. I'm going to pull my screen off because we can pay you more interest. But what that does is it locks me out of that for a certain amount of time. So if there's an emergency, we're screwed. But they're holding me hostage on my own money. But if I take it out, I mean, my interest doesn't keep up with the rate of inflation. Not by far. Not by far. It's being dissolved. My savings is being dissolved away every month by month. The only thing I can do is I could try to go and buy some digital assets and put faith in that, but they're saying that you're not going to get paid anything on that. And then if it's going to be the backing,
yes, that's where it's going. They're not going. They're going to take everything away from you, and they're going to take everything and bring it to them. They're the ones that are going to make the money. You are not.
It's a circular thing. You're talking about, let's get away from the dollar and go to a stable coin. The stable coin will be backed by assets. The assets are going to be crypto. The crypto is valued in the dollar. Hence, your stable coin is valued in the dollar. That's when they're going to switch.
Okay. I'm no financial genius, okay? But I do not see. I'm watching what's happening, okay? And this goes back to the 1972-73 creation of the petrodollar and taking us off of the gold standard. And when they created the petrodollar, it was set up as an exchange between the United States and the OPEC nations that we would defend them, we would protect them, we would sell our light sweet Brent crude to them, they would refine it, send it back to us, we would pay them more. They would trade all their oil in dollars to prop up the fiat currency, okay? And now what's happened is because the time is coming where the dollar is going to die. Those Arab countries have seen that the United States cannot fulfill its promise in protecting them. They have really soured on the United States. The United States has become an absolute bully on the world stage. They're not happy. They're breaking off from the dollar. They're heading over into BRICS. So when the United States dollar crashes, it's not going to be like you're going to be able to watch it in slow motion. It's going to happen. And all you have to do is go back and look, okay, at what happened with Great Britain when they lost the British pound as being the world currency, and what happened to Great Britain overnight within an hour or two.
That's why they're trying to do this. That's why they're trying to do this new digital thing. But I have to read these comments real quick while it's relevant.
Yeah, sure.
Guard. He said, Gardner Goldsmith, Liberty Conspiracy, Monday through Friday, 6:00 p.m. Eastern. Go check him out. It's great. Liberty Conspiracy. He says they want people to circulate and invest the stable coins. It's very Keynesian. They want spending. And I want to pause there and say something before I read the rest of his comments that my dad taught me. My dad taught me it wasn't, and he was trying to start his own. He actually had his own business doing consulting work. So he was a programmer, systems analyst and computer programmer. And then he did his own business on the side doing it. So he had to get business savvy. And he said, it's not about how much money you have in the bank. It's not even about how much money you earn in a month. It's about how much the money flow, the cash flow. Because cash flow, as long as it's flowing, the debt is kind of hidden. It's hidden in the cloud, right? And that's what America has done with our money. And this is why we're going to go to this digital system and this tokenization of everything that's being slid in. I know we're probably gonna have to pause this and do a part 2 of this, because they're gonna creep in and steal everything, the great taking, as they call it. But yeah, they want the spending because the spending hides the lack of substance. It's all theoretical. It's all numbers in a book. It's all on a ledger. Oh, I don't have it, but this other guy has it. It's coming, and it goes like that and that. So my dad was all about cash flow. He figured how to work that. And then Gar goes on to say they want the stable coins pumped into the stock market as an alternative to the interest they won't allow. And let me see, stable coins will be backed by the US debt, and the stablecoin sellers buy as the new law requires. Then the coins will be pumped into stocks and purchased to juice the economy. I think Guard's on it. I think he understands exactly what's going on. Unless you're a financial guy, which I'm not. I've learned.
I mean, I'm not either, but
it makes sense.
The U.S. debt, is actually a measure of the amount of labor that has been borrowed against. So stable coins are just going to pick where the dollar falls off in borrowing against the labor of the people and all their possessions of property. The stable coin is just going to pick up where the dollar leaves off.
That's what I've been trying to say,
because that's what the debt is a measure of, the amount of money that people have in their labor, their property.
That's what I've been trying to tell people, is that the stable coin is not something new that's going to it's not the year of Jubilee where everyone's debt's erased and we start over. All it's doing is it's kicking the can down the road in a different label. So you went from Campbell's to Hormel's or whatever. So you put a different label on the same can. And I like Hormel chili, I'm sorry, but you're kicking it down the road and throwing a different label on it. But eventually someone has to pay the piper at some point. And the piper is going to be paid with you and I, not only the assets we own, not only all public lands, the value perceived therein, but potentially your perceived labor over your lifetime based off of all the stuff that we haven't gotten to yet, which is the analytics on us, your digital twin, all the AI and data centers. I really believe the AI and data centers, number one, is to handle the stable coin thing that they're trying to do, to be able to tax people incrementally on little things, little activities, restrict people. We talk about 15-minute cities. Let's put that aside. Let's not talk about restriction on travel. I know Eric Peters talks about that. I've talked about that. We've all talked about it. But the thing is to just know what we're doing. But on top of that, the deeper thread there is to know what our lifetime is worth. So, like I said, my IQ is this. I have a genetic disease with a certain chance of having a heart attack at 50, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They build all this stuff on there and say, okay, so Jason Barker is potentially going to earn this much money. So we're going to throw that on the ledger as an asset. And that's going to back the fake money, because they're going to, it's like, I'll happily pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today type thing. If that makes sense, that's where they're going with tokenization. It's kind of like, companies, and I am invested in one company that mines they don't mine specifically for silver, but silver is part of what they do. They're valued at what they perceive to be in the ground. So, this mine, because of surveys, has, I don't know, let's say $5 million in silver in the ground or something. Let's just put an arbitrary number out there. So they'll value the stocks accordingly. But the silver's not been mined yet. What if the company goes out of business? That's it. You're done. So this is a really bad way. And I know it sounds kind of dystopian, but this is really how they're building this stable coin to build out. First, they're going to go with the other coins, like the Bitcoins and stuff like that, as a backing, which is to go back to the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is what gives teeth to this, because the Clarity Act gives the federal government oversight or control or regulation or whatever you want to call it over all of these digital assets. And it's not just they actually talked about other things. I specifically focus on the coins, but it gives them like a regulation over it. And that's where they're going to be able to
Well,
add that to their asset.
honestly, I think that that's where everybody is not paying attention to. They're so focused on stablecoin, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, this coin, that coin. They're not looking at the mechanism for which they are putting into place, which the bottom line is no matter what coin it is that they decide to give us, the bottom line is that they're going to be able to control it. You're not going to make any money off of it. And if you don't go along with what they say, how they say, when they say, and do what they say you can do, and don't do what they say you can't do. If you don't play ball with them, okay, you're getting locked out of the system. That's the mechanism that's being put into place. Either do what we tell you to do, or we lock you out. That's it. That's the bottom line. All this other stuff
that's the end game.
And that end game is that end game is at the door.
Yeah.
That's the to me that's the important thing.
Yeah, and that's I know we didn't even get nowhere close to getting there tonight, but that is Clarity Act, the Genius Act. The Genius Act passed first. Actually, the Clarity Act passed the House first. It didn't pass the Senate. And the next day, the Clarity Act went through all the way. They're still marking up. Now, to be fair, the Clarity Act has not passed fully, but I've been reading about it, and it's going to pass. It's just being marked up. They're making changes. Who knows what changes they're going to make?
The Stable Act passed. The Genius Act passed. The Clarity Act,
still in the Senate,
which is also known as the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, or the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act, that has yet to pass. And that's what it's in the Senate right now. It's cleared the committees and it's supposed to come up for a vote, but apparently they don't have the votes to pass it.
So I want people to go look it up. Look up that act. And it sounds good on its surface. It sounds really good, but read through it and really read what it says. I know it's dry reading, but it's exactly the opposite. It's kind of like the what is it? What's the act they passed after I'm drawing a blank right now. I have a lot of noise in my background distracting me. JJ's being a wild man. Hopefully y'all
the first one was the Stable Act. The second one that was was the Clarity Act.
I'm talking about the Patriot Act, right? So the Patriot Act is
the Patriot Act was that was 2005.
I'm sorry, my computer goes wonky sometimes and my camera goes out. But no, yeah, the Patriot Act is anything but patriotic. And everything, and actually we could go back and talk about the Patriot Act because of the Patriot Act, we have all this surveillance within the United States that isn't focused on enemies, but focused on us. And those mechanisms of control, surveillance, and stuff like that are actually being tied into the financial system to where we won't be able to buy or sell. And it's all tied together. And it's such a huge topic, Levi, such a huge topic that it's hard to wrap your mind around. I know 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this would have been too deep for me to understand. It really would have.
I look at this stuff from the spiritual perspective, and I understand it completely and totally, and understand where we're going with it. It's difficult for me to explain what's happening in the natural without bringing the spiritual in, and I'm not going to bring the spiritual in with it tonight. The whole purpose is to get implemented in the system in which they have complete and total control over your finances. You got a snapshot of it up in Canada when they cut off everybody's money, the truck drivers who were protesting. And that's the end goal: complete and total control. And and they've designed the system so that if they cut off your ability to transact with finances, you lose everything. Your
And
home,
let me make a connection
your
here.
cars, everything.
Since we're talking banking, let me make a connection here. With that type of control, if you have an asset that's backing your debt, like a banking debt or whatever, which in this case would be American debt, you have to control that asset, right? And if you are the asset, you personally, you have to be controlled. So in order to control you, I mean, I don't know how else to put it. We are no longer sovereign. I mean, I could use the word slave. You're a slave now at this point. You're either going to do what we say and produce for us, because those assets, and this goes back to what I was saying, your perceived value over your lifetime is on the ledger backing debt in this new system, because they want to spend more. If you don't do and produce, then you can't buy and you can starve. That is what it comes down to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's not even gonna come down to what you can produce or you can't produce. It really isn't, because and again, now you're getting into the spiritual aspect of it because of what the CBDC is based around, and that's going to be the determining factor, not what you produce, not what you own or anything else like that. All of that is determined after you deal with this one particular subject matter, which is what is the basis for the CBDC to begin with.
Hey, Levi, can we do a part 2 to this and jump into I think we're at a good transition point into the AI and data centers and technology, but we are already 2:15 and I got JJ going nuts. I'm going to have to jump off
Yeah,
here.
that's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
let's do a part 2 to this. I might be on the road next Tuesday this time. It's my birthday. I had mixed up my weeks. I thought today was my birthday, but I mixed up my weeks looking at the calendar. But I will be around, so maybe I can do it next week. And then if we do a follow on, that would be a 5th show, I guess, to get into the spiritual side of it. That would have to be a couple weeks after, because I'll be out of town. So, I mean, I hate to cut us short, but I know we've been well over 2 hours. So
that's fine. That's fine. It's
family, man. I gotta do the family thing. And
listen, it's try to understand, folks. I'm not frustrated with Jason. I'm not frustrated with his family. I'm not frustrated with anything. I'm fighting back what I know is going on in the spirit. I'm not talking about that. And see, because of the calling that's on my life and what the wisdom and knowledge Father has given me, I'm not sharing that knowledge. I'm trying to look at this from a natural perspective. And I've just been trained over the years and know that what happens in the spirit happens first, and then it manifests itself in the natural. And what is developing here is a result of what's happened in the spiritual kingdoms, and you can't solve a spiritual problem through political or through military or through fiscal ways. You can't do it. And this is why I'm a little frustrated tonight. I also recognize, finances are not my greatest forte. Okay. And it's a lot of laborious reading to go through these bills and to
yeah,
try to find exactly where they are playing the games. Okay. And so if I have let anybody down tonight, I apologize. I'm not trying to do that. Sometimes I have a problem with wanting to tell everything so and have a background, and it doesn't always work out that way. Excuse me. So
no, I think we're at a
I'm
good.
sorry.
I think we're at a good pause point where we can just pick up with this topic again and talk about the AI and data centers. I know you had a lot of information on that and the different data points they're collecting on us and how that will be used and control us. It may not be a 2-hour show. It might be a 45 or an hour show or something. But I just don't want to keep people up with this now.
No, that's fine.
Because yeah,
That's fine.
we're running a little bit long.
That's fine.
I appreciate everybody coming out, and I do want to do shout outs real quick. Let me do that. I think I kept track of everybody that was in the live chat. If I missed you, I do apologize. But we had Nostradamus came in right away. Nostradamus, that's Frank. He emails us and gives us great suggestions. We've had some good guests that we've had because he linked us up. He's really good at getting a hold of those people. Harry Hart was in there. Smoohaski, I just do want to thank you, Smoohaski. You went into a couple of our shows and put timestamps up for where they can find stuff. If they didn't want to watch the 2-hour, 3-hour show, whatever, over on Nights of the Storm. So I appreciate that. Will 2 Boxes in the house. What's going on, Will? I see you everywhere. Anna Mayers is in the house. Bronx Stomper, that's Derek. I need to get a hold of you, Derek. My wife and I just ate the last of the meat we got from our meat guy, which is selling us garbage now. So I don't know if you do a program where I can like invest in a cow and we can have the meat once it's butchered shipped to us. I don't know if you do that or not. So I'll get a hold of you on the side about that. But just know Bronx Stomper does cattle and stuff like that. Grass fed, good stuff. Sherry M2 is in the house. Handy, he's on the Boo Boo bus right now. Boo Boo bus being the ambulance.
Whammy.
He was telling me we were going to talk about that. They're masking up in Georgia again. I don't know why Georgia's quick to do that, but they're already masking up.
Yeah, it appears that they have abandoned the Hantavirus narrative.
It's Ebola now.
They are swinging. They're swinging heavily towards the Ebola. Yes.
Wow, it's like this is almost like hopscotch, right? Let's go from COVID to the other variant of COVID, the Delta, and then you throw the thing and then you jump over to measles and then you jump over to hantavirus and then you jump over. I mean, when's it going to stop? When's it going to stop? It's always going to be something constant emergency, and this plays into what we're talking about. Everything plays into what we're talking about. The virus stuff, the war stuff, those are the emergencies, and the banking stuff, because the banking stuff, and we didn't get there tonight. We'll get there next thing. But the banking stuff, in order to get where they want with the banking, they're using the other 2 items to install this massive surveillance and tracking and tracing network, whether it be wearables for your health or whether it be cameras around the city for your protection from the enemy. So that's where we're trying to go with it. That's kind of a feeder into the next episode. Hopefully we'll get there. It's a very large concept to grasp. Levi and I have talked about it for hours upon hours upon hours, and it all is connected, folks. It's all connected. And then eventually we'll talk about the spiritual side of it. But let me finish doing shout outs, Levi. We had Karen Peterson. I love talking to you on the phone, Karen. You're fun to talk to. You're a funny gal. Greg Talent's in the house, and then Gardner Goldsmith had a lot of great comments. I read a lot of them out, but yeah, great. Honeybee virus. What the heck is that, Harry? I haven't heard of that. Put that in your search bar, Levi.
Yeah, there's what it is tens of thousands of honeybees have been dying.
Yeah, because of glyphosate.
Well, there's a federal agency that discovered that the honeybees are being attacked by a mite. And these mites have become resistant to pesticides. Okay, now you can read between the lines.
Yes.
All
okay.
Right?
Yep.
What Trump did was Trump shut down that very agency that was dealing with the honeybees. And because apparently Trump believes that honeybees aren't important. And without honeybees, there's no pollination. Hummingbirds don't,
Dude, I know this. I know
don't
this.
do enough.
I
Yeah,
spent a
but Trump,
fortune.
the bees don't mean anything to Trump, so Trump doesn't care. He shut the organization down that was working with to make the bees resilient to these mites.
I'm going to tell you how important pollinators are. I spent a small fortune, at least in my dollar amount, right? Um, a small fortune to build an indoor garden. I did the lighting, I did the wiring, the tables, the everything. It was a lot of work, and it sucked. I mean, yeah, I grew some stuff. Stuff was growing, but it really sucked. And you know why? A lot of it required pollinators, and my garage is closed up. So there's no pollinators, and I had a real big problem with it. The only bugs I got in there were pests that were eating stuff like the seeds. So I had to go find an all natural, non GMO kind of spray, like an all natural spray that would repel them. That didn't even work. I moved my stuff outside this spring. It's outside now. I got to go plant some seeds yet. I think I'm a week or two behind on that for the ones I need to plant. But I moved all my tubs outside. I got rid of the indoor garden because no pollinators. And I can tell you right now, if we lose our pollinators, there's going to be famine like you've never seen. I mean, there's a lot of plants out there that are self-pollinating. So you're still going to have stuff like cherry tomatoes and things like that. But there's a lot of stuff that require pollinators. And
between okay, and this is from the state of Wisconsin. Between June of 2024 and March of 2025, approximately 1.6 million colonies of bees died as a result of these mites. And
is it the mites though, or is it the glyphosate stuff? Because glyphosate,
okay,
yeah,
they're saying it's the mites. The mites are causing.
And they also tell me
there's a virus that the mites give off that causes the bees to deform, and they have shortened wings or deformed bodies, and they die. Okay,
well, I'm going to tell you that the USDA has told me that a bird flu has killed 6 billion birds or something. And I'm like, no, the USDA killed 6 billion birds.
Okay. Trump is closing down the USDA Beltsville Agricultural Research Center, which is responsible, for working with the bees and trying to prevent the loss of the bees. So yes, are the chemtrails with the aluminum, the strontium, and the barium doing it? Yes. Is glyphosate doing it? Yes. Is the weather doing it with their weather weapons? Yes. All these factors are coming in to hurting, what God has created, and is upsetting the balance of everything, because that's all these people do is destroy. Yeah. That's all they do. Okay. And not that I'm going to go on a rant. I'd like to know if a person put poison in the water and they were caught, they would go to jail, they'd be tried, prosecuted, and if found guilty beyond preponderance of the evidence, they would be found guilty and the proper punishment would be administered out to them. But yet, these evil miscreants can turn around and put poisons in our water. And they said that that's progress. Okay. You have a man, Bill Gates, who is flying crate loads of ticks in these special boxes.
And mosquitoes,
yep. And the mosquitoes, all right, yep. with alpha-gal and with other toxins that are biting people, biting animals, killing off, and President Trump, who is also the chief law enforcement officer, is doing absolutely nothing about this. That is biochemical warfare against people and against nature. And Trump's doing nothing.
So I want to tell you this right now, Levi. The reason they would prosecute you or I if we did something like, say, poison a water supply is because they can say that these people got sick and died or just got sick or whatever. You harmed somebody because of your actions. The problem with the government is the government has so many things going on that it's a plausible deniability factor. So, oh, we have this issue of people getting sick. Well, maybe it was from the chemtrails, but we don't know that. Maybe it was from something in the water, but we don't know that. Maybe it was from the 5G tower we just put right down the street from your house, but we don't know that. Yeah, I mean, they are involved in so much that they how do you determine what the problem is? I say the problem is a cumulative factor of all of it. Maybe it's no one single thing. Why don't we just stop all of it? Do I want to have a cell phone? Yes. Do I need to have 5G? No, I don't. And I definitely don't need 6G. I don't need to be playing slots on my phone when I'm camping. I don't need to have a 6G tower there where I'm camping. I should be spending the weekend fishing with my family or float tripping. I shouldn't be playing slot machines and want the best possible graphics and the highest speed. No, I just need to be able to make a phone call. That's cool. Anyway, I'm going on and on, but we need to wrap it up. Let's pick up next time and get into the AI data center and how they're it's related to the banking. So we really should have done this as a 4-part because the AI data center is an extension of the banking, which is, go into the virus stuff, the disease stuff. We go into the war stuff, and that's the panic mode that feeds the banking. And then the banking is going to be done by AI and data centers, which are then going to control us because of the corporation, and I'm glad you went through that. It was kind of dry stuff, but the corporation thing is kind of important for people to understand because there's a liability there for these people who are fleecing us, have a liability, and now they're trying to fleece us some more to cover that liability, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
What is SRM, Harry? He said, SRM will make my garden grow. Put in the chat real quick before we check out of here. I want to know what SRM is. Okay. Let me go ahead and plug while he's getting that out there. I know there's a delay. I'm going to put my screen up. So, yeah, we got Knights of the Storm website, of course. Go check out everybody over there, thenightsofthestorm.com. Alternatively, you can put Knights with an S, Knights, OTS.com will also get you there. I got both domains. We've added a few new people. Algorithm's really cool. I like Algo. He got a Batman theme going on. I'm trying to get Red Dawn Readiness back on to talk the gun stuff and 3D printers. I have a lot of information on 3D printers. If you're interested in 3D printing, you need to get one now. And I'll tell you why if we do get on talk about it. We'll talk guns and stuff like that. Crimson Veritas, which is indie. She does Indie After Dark. Great show. They do music, like live music. They'll do karaoke. It's just a fun time. And she always has a campfire, like an animated backdrop of a campfire or some kind of fire. And they do the music. And then afterwards, they do talk. And then there's usually an after, you can go into the studio and chat with them. That's no longer broadcast, but you can just talk with them and stuff. It's a lot of fun. Wheezy, what is Truth TV? Wheezy's a friend of ours. Explicit warning for that show, but I love Wheezy. Wheezy is one of the best dudes. He really helped us out. Oh, we got the Third Rail with Dave. Dave's cool. And anyway, go check it out. I did update the schedule here. It probably needs some stuff removed, actually. But there's the schedule. That's your Monday through Friday TV guide of sorts for there's live chat. And I think that, and if you do feel like donating, there is a link to our PayPal, which we do get some people that donate, and I do appreciate that. I actually do appreciate that. And I don't use that money to fund any of the show, actually. I make sure that goes to the other hosts, the ladies, in the form of a wolf pack, which I'm wearing my Wise Wolf. If you want to get a wolf pack and you want to join it or whatever, which is a monthly thing, or you can do a one-time thing. Use jasonbarker.gold, which actually represents the whole of Knights of the Storm. That money will all go, what little bit we get as a commission will all go to the team so they can upgrade equipment. And that's it for my plugging. Oh, and I did want to mention one last thing. In the Rumble chat, there is pinned a video that I'm going to watch now that was left. Who left that? Was it Bronx Stomper that left that? I forget who left that.
I believe it was.
Yeah. Go check that out. That's going to talk about, we were talking about the Confederate Constitution, Articles of Confederation. I think people should understand what that is and the difference between that and our current Constitution, because the Articles of Confederation were more, we had more freedoms under that. It was better outlined. I mean, just read like that bill. I don't know if it's called the Bill of Rights, but the rights that were outlined in the Articles of Confederation are more defined than what's in the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I think that there would be no debate over the Second Amendment whatsoever if we were still in the Articles of Confederation, the First Amendment, anything like that. There'd be no debate because it was well spelled out, in my opinion. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off there. Levi, what do you got for us, man, before we get out of here?
I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here tonight on the show. I apologize. I was stumbling over the information because I wasn't very well organized tonight, and I apologize. I owe you a better performance than that, a better
you did fine,
presentation
Levi.
than that.
It's a lot of information to go through. You did absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's you know, again, in doing all this research, you start unlocking their documents, and you start seeing they've documented everything. It's out there for you to find, and you can still find it. Now, stuff is being scrubbed, but it's just it's amazing how all of this has come together, and the Word of God tells us everything that's happening, and it's just it's not easy for me to talk about stuff in the natural without a spiritual without giving it in the spirit. So I apologize to everybody for a poor show tonight. I'm not happy with it.
We'll give you a whole episode, which I will chime in on when it gets to that. And I do want to say that SRM, Harry Hart says SRM is solar radiation modification. I would like to know about that. So let's get offline. Offline, we'll talk about that, Harry, if you have my email, which it's there, the knightsofthestorm.com. Not, was it the knightsofthestorm at gmail.com? I'm sorry. But all right, go ahead, Levi, finish up. Talk about, you're going to be doing a show soon or something? What's going on?
I've been, my show is going to be kicking off soon. I've been spending years, breaking the Word of God down in the Hebrew and the Greek, the original languages. And so it's going to be very informative. It's going to, I don't know how people are going to take it, because the name of the series is They Lied. They shut the doors of the kingdom of heaven, and they don't enter into it themselves. And a lot of people are going to be very, very surprised at how much the Word of God truly does reveal about what's going on in this time. And it's going to be deep, and it's going to be very profound. But I've gone through word by word, scripture by scripture, and it's amazing what gets unlocked. So it's coming soon.
It's amazing to
everything.
me. It's amazing to me when I talked on Gardner Goldsmith's show again, Liberty Conspiracy, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, Twitter, maybe YouTube. I know he does this Star Trek thing on YouTube, but anyway, I read the Bible cover to cover to get an overall view. and it was very hard to do. It's a very difficult read to go cover to cover. There's parts that are great and parts that are dry. I think that's a necessity, though, to get the 10,000 mile ahead above view, so that when you go back in and study, things are in full context. And anyway, after I did that, I really got interested in the book of you call it Apocalyptus.
Apocalyptus,
Yeah,
okay, is Greek for the revelation. So the
right, the
apocalypse of
Revelations.
Yahushua Christos is the revelation of Yahushua Christos.
Yeah,
Yes.
but what I found was I was trying to figure out this because I like a good mystery, right? And it's a challenge when they talk about the mark of the beast. The 666 for he who has wisdom. Try to figure it out. And I got onto this mystery bus, the mystery machine, like Scooby Doo. And I'm doing research, and this is in the early days of the internet, Windows 95. Now I'm going long. I was trying to close out, but I'm going long. But this is kind of important. I went and I was going through all these college campuses like UCLA and UNLV and stuff like that. Their libraries are pretty much online. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was curated by Google. You could look for stuff. I think Yahoo was the search engine, the only search engine really that people used. And you could find anything you wanted. And I found all these studies. And one thing that blew my mind was I learned about the word biometrics. I was looking at mark of the beast stuff. I was looking about buying and selling. I was looking about currencies. And they were always tied to biometrics, always. And I didn't even know what biometrics meant. I had to look the word up. And here we are today. So we're talking, this is maybe 94-ish. Let's see, I went in the Army in 99. So maybe it was 95, 96. It might have been around mid 90s. But I'm researching buying and selling and a mark that would be associated with it. Of course, everyone back then thought it was going to be a barcode tattooed on you. That was a big rumor back then.
I have a whole I've got a list that covers a whole page.
Yeah.
There's over 30 things since the 1950s that have been called the mark
Yeah.
of the beast.
Well, the thing that caught
they're all wrong, and that's
the thing that caught my attention, and this is where you and I might disagree, but in a technical fashion, we do agree, Levi. The barcode, I looked into the technology of barcodes, and then I looked into RFID chips because they had them back then in the early to mid 90s. They had them, and I looked at the technology behind it, and the RFID was just a digital barcode. That's all it was. It was a digital, not digital, like a wireless way of transmitting the same information that's in a barcode. So, I thought at the time, okay, we're going to get a chip in our hand or our forehead, right? Like a little size of the grain of rice type chip. Now we're into QR codes, and we have these micro needle patches that will leave a tattoo that's a QR code. Well, guess what? The QR code's the same thing. And then we can talk about internally, and we will talk about that in the spiritual thing, Levi, about how it may not have to be something that's even visible. I don't want to go there tonight, but you know where I'm getting at, Levi. It's an extension. It's basically you're assigned a number. You're assigned a number and a database, which will be these data centers will have an account that is you or your digital twin in this case, where we're getting to, and that will be you, and you will be judged based on that, digital twin. And it could be a barcode. It could be a credit card swipe with a magnetic strip. It could be an RFID chip. It could be a QR code, or it could be something, a signal emitted from your body, wearable or implantable. And implantable could be injectable. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
I'm just going to show you this, okay?
Okay.
When you look at a QR code, what's in the QR code?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if you break down a QR code and you see the 3 dots, which for alignment, there's one top right, one top left, and one bottom left. The edge of those are all on the 6th line. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to say
Yes,
that.
they're all on the 6th line, but
Yes, they are.
when you okay,
I
on
didn't
the
know
6th
anybody else
line,
knew. I thought that was something that I just saw. I've never talked to anybody about it.
no. It's on the 6th line, but
Mhm.
okay, you have 6 squares, okay, on the 6th
6th line.
line,
We've
okay?
never talked about this, Levi, but I've picked this up
But
myself as
but
well. Yeah.
the thing that people need to understand about the number 666, and I'm just going to leave with this, okay? There's not going to be a 666 put on your hand or on your forehead. 666 is the number which represents a man. When you read Apocalyptus 13:18, that he who has wisdom, let him understand. It is the number of a man.
The number, the name, the mark, the name, the
Okay.
number. Yeah, I get it.
That's okay. It is
That's
the
what got
number
me
of
into it,
a
man.
man.
It's all
So when you
wisdom.
see things out there like the QR code, okay, the UPC code or anything else like that, and you find the 666 in it, that is the equivalent of a dog lifting its leg, pissing, and marking its territory. And the 666 gives it away as to who it is and what it is. Because anytime you find something associated with 666, you're dealing with the beast system. And the word of God tells you who the beast is, what the beast is, and who the beast is. What, who, when, and where. It answers all the questions. And it's a mystery. It's hidden from those who are wicked and ungodly. That's not my opinion. That's not my conjecture. That when you look up the word mystery in the Greek, mysterion, and you'll see it in the Hebrew too, it means the hidden things that God reveals to his chosen, but keeps it from the wicked and the ungodly. And this is why it's so important to go into the Hebrew and the Greek,
It's
because the original languages, they have meaning, and these meanings are not relayed through the changing of the words into the other languages of the world. And when people find out what's going on, you're going to find many people are going to be just frightened. So,
all right. Well, let's bust out of
um,
here. When we do the recap episode, so I'm thinking this is probably going to be a 5-episode thing because we didn't even get to half of the banking portion. And Levi, you told me as much. You said there's so much here. I don't know how we can get to it because you have to understand the background. Yeah, we have to understand the
yes.
background before we understand the foreground. So I get that. We'll just do a second episode, bro, and then we'll do the we'll do the spiritual side of it where we tie it into the buying and selling. And I have no problem doing that. I have absolutely no problem talking the spiritual side. I do want to say hi to Hemp Car. Hemp Car came in the chat, so I want to acknowledge everybody who comes in the chat and interacts with people there. And that's it. We didn't get to, well, we kind of did get to, you're going to be starting a show soon.
Yeah, I'll be starting a show soon.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's your plan? Are you going to do a live show with live chat? Are you going to do
Some
pre-recorded?
some shows are going to be live, and other shows are going to be a narration. The scripture will be put on the screen, and the scripture will be read, and the interpretation of the scripture from the Hebrew and the Greek will be given, and it'll be done by slides or imagery. I realize that AI is used for nefarious reasons. I'm still debating whether or not I want to do the form of doing a cartoon sort of narration.
And you would require AI to do that, yeah.
Yes, and so I'm still debating that. It's part of me believes that I owe the people to see my face and to see me. The work I've done has come to great cost to me, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I've spent many a night crying. Many of you know that I've tried to talk on David Knight's chat, and I've made some mistakes, and I've admitted those mistakes. But I cry a lot because I see people destroying themselves, and they won't listen to reason, and it's a very very tough place. The Word of God says that when you increase in knowledge, your sorrow increases proportionately, and it does. It does.
Yeah, I know. Well, all right, let's go ahead and get out of here, man. I want to thank everybody again for coming out, and we'll do this again. I'm going to try to do, Levi, if you're cool with it, we'll try to do part 2 of the banking next Tuesday. It is my birthday, so I think we're supposed to be on the road going to some fancy restaurant that my wife wants to take me to.
Just
I don't know that for
keep
sure. I'll let you know.
Just let me know.
Yeah.
Just let me know.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, what is it I read? It says that does it for tonight. Remember to hold your ground, watch the enemy, improve the foxhole, and always look out for one another. Until next time, God bless.
We're in the foxhole now.